Now I'm gonna create my own effects for my text. So here I wrote web design, and to create your own effects, actually you can create your effects and you can save them. You don't just create them, you can use them over and over if you like. There's the style palette. I'm not gonna actually use it, but I'm gonna use it to store my own effect that I'm gonna create right now. So I'm gonna click on F, and let's see what everything does before we save a preset. So here I added drop shadow. When you add drop shadow, it's a shadow underneath the layer. The good thing about it is that you can move it interactively. Now look here what's happening whenever I move it here and there. I'm changing the angle and the distance. So you can either do it interactively before you press OK, because after you press OK you would move the whole layer. But to move the drop shadow all by itself, you have to move it while you have the layer style window open. Is this clear? Alright. So I'm changing distance here. You can also change it from there. The opacity is to make it transparent or opaque. Now, I shouldn't use these effects very clearly, because if it's very obvious, it wouldn't look too unique. Because anybody who has Photoshop can add these and use them. It will look too deja vu. So we want to use something that's not very visible. So what I like to do with the drop shadow is two things. I like to use it in two ways myself personally. I like to remove the blurring, and you remove the blurring by reducing the size down to 0. That way the shadow is very sharp, just like the original layer. I will decrease the opacity and I'll place it next to the layer. That creates a nice style, design wise. Alright, compared to this, which looks very cliche. So that's the first thing I like to use with the drop shadow. The second thing I like to do with the drop shadow is actually blur it out, but without moving it from the original layer. So if I put it in the same place, that way the distance is 0. Then I would blur it out by increasing the size, and it would look nice that way. Right? It would have a nice style to it. You shouldn't increase this too much, right? So, like this. So, the difference is minimal, but that is what is required. You don't want to have a big, thick shadow. It would look very ugly. So this is my preference. You don't have to follow this all the time, because every time you're going to get the same type and it will look boring. But when you actually work on these, think about the thickness of the shadow. It shouldn't be too thick. It shouldn't be too strong. So that's the drop shadow. Now what can I do with the drop shadow? I can spread it out to make it thicker. Of course that's too much, but I'm just showing you what it does. And you can change the contour from down here. Right? If you click on the arrow, you can choose different forms, and these would create different variations on your drop shadow. So these are the effects that are actually used by the layer styles that we just saw earlier. Can I color the drop shadow? Yes, I can. I click here on the black color and I select something. Let's say red. Now sometimes if you choose, let's say yellow, you will not see it very well. Now it's seen, it's visible, because I don't have anything next to it. But sometimes you choose something and you don't see it very well. Like here I have the strong red, but the drop shadow is very faint red. Who knows why? No, because the blend mode is set to multiply. Multiply means darken whatever you have. Since I have a very bright white, since I have white, the shadow is not going to be so strong. If I go to blend mode and choose normal, it's going to be the full color that you choose. Right? So this is very important. Let's choose the different let's try the different blending modes. I'm selecting one and pressing down with the arrow. So sometimes you don't see the shadow at all, because of the blending mode. Sometimes you see it colored differently. I'm going to talk about all of them in detail maybe next time, but for now you should know that the blending mode is very important to how your shadow is looking. Right? So the default is multiply, and let's go to 70%. So that's the drop shadow. Let's uncheck now drop shadow to see what the inner shadow does. Now the inner shadow is not showing me anything. Who knows why? If I check and uncheck, I have nothing. Because the inner shadow is black and the text is also black. Therefore, I'm not getting anything. Let's change the color of the text to white or to yellow or whatever. Then we can see something. To change the color of the text while in the layer style, I go to color overlay. You see, when I added my color overlay, the default is red. I'm going to choose an ochre color, something like this. Now, if I go back to inner shadow, I do see something. So it's the shadow on the inside. Again, you can move this inner shadow around interactively, like I'm doing right now. So if you go like this and place it exactly in the middle, you're going to get an emboss type of effect, like the text is actually bulging out. You can move it around. Now, most of the times this looks ugly, so don't use it a lot unless you know what you're doing. If I choose, let's say, red for the color, I can again go to normal and make it 100% opaque to see the exact color that I'm looking for. Otherwise, I'll bring it back to black. You can choke it by making it stronger like this. You can increase the size. And again, you have different contours that you can use to create different effects. So here I can create something nice if I changed my black color to something else. Let's say to red. It would look like I actually have the text being lit. Right? Here the anti-aliased would make your text look better when you are printing at a high scale. It doesn't make any difference now, but if my text was bigger and printed on a big billboard, it would make a difference. So anti-aliased would make this look better in terms of quality. So let's try the different ones. Okay, I like this one the best here. If I add noise, it will grain out the effect. So here I'm zooming in, Control plus. This is what the noise is doing. If I reduce it back to 0, I have no grain. If I increase it, I would have grain and eventually a lot of grain, which is not a good thing unless you really want it. So in this case, 5% maybe is a good value. So that's the inner shadow. I can combine both drop shadow and inner shadow if I like. Outer glow, if I select it, here I have nothing because the blending mode is set to screen. Let's set the glow to blue just to make it different. Again, I have nothing because my mode is set to screen. If I set it to normal, I would start to see the outer glow. So it's a glow on the outside. I can increase the spread by making it when I increase the spread, I make it stronger. Increase the size. You can make it soft or precise. When you choose precise, it will take the exact form of the letter. If you don't choose precise, it will not take the exact form of the letter. It will blend in between the different letters. Again, you can intensify, increase or decrease the intensity and choose between the different contours. And so forth. All of them will follow the same rules. Again, here I cannot see it very well because I have yellow over yellow. If I make it white and normal, I would see it a bit more. Bevel and emboss, we talked about it before. Again, you should not really use this a lot because a lot of people use it. So here I'm decreasing the size. When I decrease the size, it will look nice and stylish. You can click here to change the direction of the light. Satin will add shading inside your layer. It's not very nice. I don't like to use it a lot. Color overlay is to add a color. If you don't, it's gonna have the original color that it had. Gradient overlay, we're gonna talk about it in detail once I talk about the gradient in detail, which is next time. Pattern overlay, I'm gonna talk about it in detail once I talk about patterns, which is the time after. And stroke is just a line around your text. You can change the size and the color from here. You can also put it outside or inside your text or your layer or in the center. Okay, your job now is to create a nice style for the text. Now let's say that I want to save my style. In this case, I just have a drop shadow. All I have to do is select my style from down here, click and drag over to my style and name it. So I would call it, for example, my drop shadow. Of course, I shouldn't really save this because it just has a simple drop shadow. But in case I had a more complicated effect, I would probably save it. And I'll press OK. So let's delete now this layer and create this. And click on my drop shadow, and it's going to have the same style that I had before when I saved it. So this is how you create your own styles and save them inside the styles palette.